By the time I finished reading the HOA board, their Miranda rights, the snack table still looked untouched and perfectly arranged. 7 folding chairs sat lined up in a neat row inside the Whispering Pines Estates clubhouse, now partially blocked by 3 county deputies, 2 federal agents, and 1 very bewildered golden retriever therapy dog that someone had brought for a community engagement. In the very center of this chaos stood HOA President Dorothy Vance, floral cardigan and righteous fury, handcuffed and shrieking that we had no authority to arrest them, that they were the law in Whispering Pines. One of the federal agents leaned casually against the Vision and Values poster, chewing gum. He deadpanned that real law enforcement does not wear vests labeled HOA Police in Comic Sans. On the snack table, right beside a bowl of untouched hummus, sat the evidence. A stack of fake residential compliance warrants printed straight off Google. A binder titled HOA Enforcement Unit Operations. Dozens of photos of my own living room, my closet, my safe taken during the unauthorized raid they'd staged on my home. I flipped open the binder, turned a page, and tapped a line with my pen. Then I read aloud the section describing Operation Code Brown, their plan to raid my house while I was out of town. Break into my safe, destroy property, and broadcast the whole thing to the neighborhood as a dramatic criminal takedown. Dorothy glared at me with pure venom. She spat out that I had lied to them, that I had told them I was just a government administrator. I took out my badge case and snapped it open. I told her she was close, but not quite. I was the federal sheriff assigned to this joint task force, Ms. Vance, and congratulations, her little pretend police squad had just interfered with an active federal case. The room went absolutely silent. Outside the clubhouse windows, half the subdivision was gathered, watching as the HOA's elite enforcement unit sat zip-tied on the curb in their matching navy vests. Across the front, in bold white letters, Whispering Pines, HOA Police. Underneath, in much smaller print, because of course order matters, were the words for community compliance. Yes, we were absolutely going to talk about that. My name is Daniel Cross, 38. On paper, I am the least interesting man alive. One jog at 6 o'clock a.m., grilled chicken with a precision bordering on neurotic, and wave politely at neighbors while dragging my trash can to the curb. My closet is 80% gray t-shirts. My idea of rebellion is using 2 different hot sauces. To the residents of Whispering Pines Estates, I'm the quiet guy in Lot 27 who works in government, which is technically true. What I don't mention at block parties is the full context. I'm a sheriff's investigator permanently assigned to a federal task force. Fugitive recovery, multi-state warrants, the worst of the worst. Federal sheriff is what I say when I don't feel like explaining jurisdiction sharing while someone is grilling Costco hot dogs. My wife, Sarah, is a nurse. We moved to Whispering Pines because she loved the walking trails, and I loved the idea of a garage big enough for my truck. The glossy neighborhood brochure promised safety and serenity. What it really meant was, welcome to a community where the grass is short, the power is petty, and the HOA has more bylaws than some countries have laws. At the center of all that petty power was Dorothy Vance, early 60s, helmet hair, a pearl necklace that had seen things, and a voice sharp enough to cut through stucco. She'd been HOA president since the Bush administration and spoke of the job like it was a branch of the military. She introduced herself on move-in day with a clipboard, a highlighter, and the warning that they do not tolerate non-compliance here. Mr. Cross. It spreads. I smiled, signed the forms, and mentally filed the encounter under suburban nuisance, mild. I've confronted men with felony warrants and rifles. No, I wasn't about to get worked up over an aging Karen with a laminated rulebook. So I did what I do best in my off hours. Kept my head down, stayed boring, minded my business. Unfortunately, in HOA country, minding your own business is considered suspicious behavior. The nonsense began exactly 6 days after we moved in. Violation number 1. Improper vehicle visibility. Translation: my perfectly legal, perfectly registered, unmarked work truck. Gray, boring. Neutral had been visible in my driveway for more than 12 hours. Dorothy CC'd the entire board on the email. Per Section 7.4b, only sedans and SUVs of neutral color may appear in front-facing driveways. Trucks must remain housed in garages at all times. I responded with exactly 2 words. Noted. Thanks. Then came violation number 2. Approved flag. I fly the American flag. Normal size, clean, not neon. Dorothy's email said, only pre-approved. Flag designs, see Appendix 4, were permitted. And my current flag was non-compliant with the community color palette. Yes, she tried to regulate the colors of the U.S. flag. I ignored it. She sent a second notice with a $50 fine attached. Violation number 3 arrived soon after. Suspicious foot traffic. Apparently, my irregular hours, shift work, night ops, court testimony had alarmed the community watch. A friendly neighbor, David, from Lot 19, stopped me by the mailboxes. He said Dorothy was convinced I was running some sort of off-the-books business. She'd been writing down my license plate every time I left after 11 p.m. I told him, cool, if she gets bored, tell her to try NCIC. She loved that database. He blinked and asked if that was like next door, but for cops. I said something like that. Dorothy escalated. She formed something called the Whispering Pines Compliance and Safety Task Group, which is HOA speak for hall monitors with delusions of grandeur. She recruited 3 of the most chronically understimulated men in the neighborhood. Gary, the middle-aged CrossFit guy with too much camo. Kevin, the IT guy who thinks binge-watching crime documentaries makes him a detective. And Brian, retired, chronically angry, owner of a drone. Within a month, they had matching Navy vests with HOA police Velcro patches, clipboards, cheap body cams, and walkie-talkies. They insisted on using them even when they were standing 3 feet apart. They patrolled the streets, peeking into garages, measuring grass, and reminding teenagers that skateboards were a liability risk. Then the email started. Per the observations of the Compliance Task Group, there appears to be heavy, unexplained night activity at Lot 27. One night, while I was loading gear into my truck, around 11 p.m., I noticed a tiny red light blinking from inside the hedges. I walked over, reached in, and yanked out Brian's drone mid-hover. The next morning, we received violation No. for interference with HOA safety surveillance procedures. Sarah wanted to scream. I told her to breathe. I deal with felons all day, I said, while making coffee. I can outwait an overzealous HOA president. Spoiler, I was wrong. Oh. Dorothy wasn't bored. Dorothy was escalating. It happened while I was 2 states away, helping apprehend a fugitive. My phone buzzed mid-briefing. It was Sarah, her voice tight, shaking. She whispered, "Daniel, there are people in the house." My brain flipped instantly into work mode. I asked her who. She hissed, "The HOA police." "Dorothy is here. They say they have a warrant." They pushed past me. My blood ran cold. I asked what kind of warrant. She said it was a residential compliance warrant, complete with the HOA logo at the top. No judge's name, just Dorothy's signature. Behind her, I could hear drawers slamming and voices calling out. "Check the closets. Photograph everything that looks like equipment." Sarah choked on her next words. "Daniel, they're tearing the place apart. They broke your lockbox. They're taking pictures of your gear, your case files." Case files. Daniel, evidence, secure. Items. Things that absolutely should not be photographed and emailed around a Facebook group. I walked straight out of the briefing room, already dialing county dispatch back home. I said, "This is Investigator Daniel Cross, badge 8472. I need units at my residence immediately. Possible burglary in progress. Suspects claiming HOA authority. The dispatcher heard the address and swore under her breath. Whispering Pines, you're the third call. This month. Units en route 10 minutes. In the background on Sarah's phone, Dorothy's voice rose above the chaos. This is what happens when you try to run secret operations in my subdivision. You think we don't see the comings and goings? The large packages? You think you're above community standards? Not in Whispering Pines. She was live streaming on the Whispering Pines Facebook group. Neighbors were watching a shaky video of my bedroom being ransacked by 3 middle-aged men in Amazon tactical vests. The caption read, HOA police raid suspected illegal operation in Lot 27. Your board is keeping you safe. By the time county deputies arrived, the damage was catastrophic. They found my front door forced open, my office trashed, drawers dumped, my gun safe broken, confidential documents scattered, some half shredded. Sarah sat shaking on the couch while Dorothy argued with the deputy about jurisdiction. She shoved her warrant in his face, insisting the board had full authority to inspect for covenant violations. The deputy stared at it and said flatly, Ma'am, this is a piece of printer paper. Dorothy scoffed. This is a legal instrument per our bylaws. The HOA police have rights. She genuinely said this to an actual law enforcement officer without a hint of irony. The deputy documented everything, separated Sarah from the board members, and called a supervisor. The neighbor comment section went nuclear. While I drove through the night toward home, the situation escalated further, not because of the smashed furniture, but because of what they had destroyed. Federal evidence in an active case. Dorothy hadn't just kicked a hornet's nest. She had marched up to a federal beehive and punted it. I entered my home the next morning beneath police tape. The living room looked like a budget crime scene reenactment. Couch cushions everywhere, drawers overturned, a bookshelf on its side. My office was worse. My evidence lockbox, approved, logged, and always secured, had been busted open with what looked suspiciously like a decorative HOA-branded paperweight. I took a breath, then 2, then 3, and then I did something I rarely do inside my own home. I drew my badge and rested my hand on my holstered weapon. The county captain met me at the doorway. He said grimly that he was sorry. They had body cam footage, witness statements, and the HOA's own live stream. It's all documented, he said. I asked if they touched my case files. He nodded. Some pages are missing. We bagged everything we could. But yeah, it's bad. Behind him, Dorothy stood on the sidewalk, arms folded, flanked by her little HOA police squad. She looked offended that patrol cars were even present. She loudly announced that they couldn't treat her board like criminals they had caused. Lot 27 had been a problem property. I stepped to the property line and met her eyes. Calmly, I said, Dorothy, you kicked in my door. She sniffed and said it had been unlocked. I told her it wasn't. She replied, we have a master key. It's in the covenants. I asked whether a judge had signed her residential compliance warrant. She launched into a speech about how their bylaws gave them full authority, but I cut her off. Did a judge sign it? She hesitated. We do not answer to your courts, Mr. Cross. This is a private community. We have our own processes. I actually laughed. Couldn't stop myself. Okay, I said, you've made your choices. The rest of my day consisted of 2 things. Walking county detectives through what had been in that lockbox, and why this was now a full-blown obstruction and destruction of evidence situation, and calling my boss at the task force to deliver the worst sentence imaginable. We have a potential compromise on secured materials, but I can explain. And yes, it involves an HOA. Federal prosecutors love 2 things, coffee and slam-dunk obstruction cases. Dorothy had just gift-wrapped them both. Within a week, subpoenas went out for HOA financials, board, Meeting minutes and emails detailing the compliance task group and its so-called policing powers. Turns out, Operation Code Brown wasn't their first raid. They had inspected 3 other homes, leaving messes, threats, and angry residents in their wake. Dorothy's emails read like a suburban manifesto. We must act where the county refuses to. We are the thin beige line between order and chaos. The U.S. Attorney's Office formed a task group. The County Sheriff's Office formed a task group, and me. I was the taxpayer-funded crossover episode connecting them both. For the first time since we moved in, I didn't hide what I did for a living. I sat across from assembled agents, detectives, and prosecutors. I set the binder on the table and said, "So who wants to go to book club at Whispering Pines?" They let me take point. After all, someone had to deliver the news to the HOA police that they were about to meet the actual kind. We rolled into Whispering Pines Estates on a Tuesday at 6:30 p.m., right on schedule for the monthly HOA meeting. Neighbors drifted toward the clubhouse carrying spinach, dip, and simmering grievances. Dorothy stood at the door with her clipboard and lanyard, greeting everyone like she was hosting a diplomatic summit. Inside, the HOA police already wore their vests. Gary stretched like he was about to raid a cartel compound, instead of complaining about recycling bins. Brian set up his drone on the snack table. I stepped into the room last, not in jeans and a hoodie this time, but in full-duty gear, badge visible, sidearm holstered. Behind me came deputies, federal agents, and one very patient assistant U.S. attorney. Heads turned. Dorothy's smile froze. She said slowly, "Daniel, this is a closed board session. Residents may speak during the designated comments period." The assistant U.S. attorney answered before I could. His voice was crisp. "Actually, Ms. Vance, this is a court-authorized search and seizure under federal and state warrants. Everyone, remain exactly where you are." He handed her a packet thick enough to stun a rhino. Dorothy flipped through it, eyes darting wildly. This must be a mistake. We haven't done anything illegal. We're a volunteer board." He nodded politely. "Yes, volunteers who conspired to impersonate law enforcement, conducted unlawful entries, destroyed property, and interfered with an ongoing federal investigation." Gary scoffed. "We're HOA police. That's not impersonating real cops. We never said we were the government." One of the agents held up a printed screenshot of Gary's Facebook post. Him in his vest captioned, "Another night on patrol, keeping the community safe. People think we're actual cops, lol," the agent said. "A jury is going to eat this alive." Brian took one step toward the door. I said quietly, "Don't." He froze. Dorothy spun toward me, shaking with anger. "You told us you worked in government administration." "You lied." "I do work in government," I said. Then I flipped my badge fully open, letting the fluorescent lights catch the metal. "I'm a sworn sheriff's investigator assigned as a federal officer to a joint task force. Federal sheriff is just shorter. You raided a law enforcement officer's home, destroyed, secured materials, and live-streamed it. The room went so silent you could hear the fluorescent hum." Overhead, Sarah stood at the back, arms folded. She didn't smile, she just looked exhausted and satisfied. Sheriff's deputies moved in with practiced choreography. One collected laptops and phones. Another photographed the HOA police vests laid out like a sad, tactical display. An agent read Gary, Kevin, and Brian their rights as they stared at the floor. Dorothy pointed a trembling finger at me. "You brought this on us. All we ever wanted was order, standards. You could have just followed the rules." I stepped closer, voice low but clear. "The rules do not let you break into homes. They do not let you smash safes. They do not let you invent fake warrants because you're bored and scared of pickup trucks. You wanted to play police. You picked the wrong house." They cuffed her gently but firmly. Her floral cardigan bunched awkwardly around the plastic restraints. She gasped. You can't treat me like a criminal. I'm the HOA president. I nodded to the deputy. Exactly, an abuse of authority is still abuse even when the badge is laminated. Outside, through the clubhouse windows, Whispering Pines residents filmed as the entire compliance and safety task group was walked to patrol cars, vests, clipboards, and all. Someone whispered, they really had a SWAT team. For grass length, another muttered, dude, they raided his house. Over a truck, the fallout was thorough. Criminally, Dorothy was charged with multiple offenses: criminal trespass, conspiracy, property destruction, obstruction, and interference with law enforcement operations. Her HOA police goons picked up charges for trespass, impersonation, and a grab bag of misdemeanors. The residential compliance warrants became Exhibit A in every hearing, a stack of ridiculous, self-important documents printed in 12-point Times New Roman, proving intent in the stupidest way possible. Dorothy took a plea deal. She received 18 months of supervised probation, 600 hours of community service, and a ban on serving on any HOA board or governance position for 10 years. Her community service assignment: working in the county records office under strict supervision, filing real legal documents for people who actually understand what a warrant is. The judge, who had clearly seen some things, added a special condition: the defendant is prohibited from wearing any clothing or accessories that suggest law enforcement authority, including, but not limited to, vests labeled police, security, or similar. Gary and the boys got shorter probation terms and fines, plus a strongly worded lecture from the judge about midlife crises and cosplay. On the civil side, the hammer hit even harder. With a very motivated attorney, Sarah and I sued the HOA as an entity, Dorothy personally, and the 3 officers. The settlement included full repair and replacement of everything damaged in our home, monetary compensation for stress and legal costs, and a formal acknowledgement of the obstruction issues. A court-appointed receiver was installed to run Whispering Pines HOA governance for 3 years. In plain English, Dorothy lost her toy government. A grown-up was placed in charge. The new receiver rewrote the bylaws from the ground up. No compliance task forces, no HOA police, no tactical cosplay. Enforcement procedures were simplified and reasonable. Fines, notices, hearings, not home invasions. A resident Bill of Rights was added, beginning with, no board member may enter a property without the owner's consent or a lawful court order. Also, by neighborhood vote, the phrase, because order matters was officially banned from all community materials. Dorothy stood in the courtroom as the judge read the final terms. Her face, the color of old concrete. Her hands shook as she clutched the defense table. When the bailiff asked if she understood the conditions, she opened her mouth twice before any sound emerged. She whispered, yes. Then louder, her voice edged with hysteria. This isn't fair. We were protecting the neighborhood. The judge looked at her over his glasses and said, dryly, Ms. Vance, you broke into a federal officer's home with fake police credentials and destroyed evidence in an active investigation. Fair left the building the moment you put on that vest. She sank into her chair, face buried in her hands, sobbing that she had given 15 years to that community. 15 years. No one in the gallery said a word. Subscribe to HOA Conflicts for more.